In today's video, we're going to create a fully autonomous agent in Copilot Studio, an agent that runs independently and makes decisions all on its own. And the best part is, this agent can read from any Excel file and write back to any Excel file. That's right, any Excel file. We're going to create these Excel abilities as generic components so that you're able to use them across all your agents. Heck, you could even go create a whole army of AI agents with this new technique. But before we start to build, let's take a look at today's agent in action. This is the Excel Autonomous Agent, an agent that can read and write to files stored in a SharePoint document library. In this case, we're talking about expense reports. In this expense report, you can see that the accounting code and the account name are left blank. So what the agent is going to do is it's going to read this entire expense report. It's going to extract all of its values. Then it's going to use its knowledge to determine the correct accounting code and account name. And then it's going to write those values back into the Excel sheet. Let's take a look at how this works. I'm going to hit the three dots right here and start my test trigger when a file is created. This agent starts when a new file is dropped into a SharePoint document library. It's going to read the Excel file and extract all of its values. Then it's going to use the agent knowledge to get accounting expense codes and decide which value should be written back to the Excel sheet. And when I open up my travel expense report, you can see that the agent is writing those values into the file one by one, just like a real live person. This is exciting. Now, I'm going to show you how to build this agent. First things first, head on over to Copilot Studio and start a brand new agent, give it a name, and then add this description, an agent that can read and write to Excel files stored in a SharePoint document library. It's important that you turn orchestration on, that's generative orchestration. That way the autonomous agent is able to create plans and execute them for you. Now, autonomous agents need a good set of instructions. They need goals, so they know what to work towards, and then they need a set of step-by-step instructions so they know how to work towards that goal. Let's take a moment to read our goal. The agent will fill in an expense report with the proper account codes and account names from its knowledge. And then we have some instructions. Execute the topic, read an Excel file. We haven't created that topic yet, but we're just going to put a placeholder here and then make a reference to that topic once we've made it. Second step is read the knowledge file accountingexpensecodes.pdf to get the list of valid account codes. And then we're going to run a tool called write cell values to an Excel worksheet to update the Excel worksheet and its values. And then there's another important instruction at the bottom. Do not assign an account code and an account name unless they appear in accountingexpensecodes.pdf. We don't want this agent to go off the rails and to make things up. The instructions look good. Let's hit this save button and head on over to the next step. How do Copilot Studio agents know how to start taking actions? They do so by using triggers. So let's scroll down on this menu here and we can see a trigger section. It says set up your agent to activate when certain events happen. And that's just what we want. We want this agent to start going when a new file is created in the SharePoint document library. This document library right over here. I've got a document library called expense reports, and you should go ahead and create one too right now. And the other thing I want you to create is a new Excel file. A new Excel file to be your travel expense report. This one has my name, has the date submitted, and a list of travel expenses, and their dates, their vendor names, and their total amounts. I've also got columns for account code and account name, and you want to leave these fields blank because this is what the agent is going to fill in using its knowledge. It's going to write back to this Excel sheet. And if you don't want to create this for yourself, just look for a link in the YouTube video show notes, and I'll have a version of this ready for you to download. Then go back over to Copilot Studio and add your trigger to the agent. So I'm going to hit the Add Trigger button, search for SharePoint, and use the When a File is Created Properties Only trigger. On this screen, it's going to create the connections to Copilot Studio and SharePoint. And on this next screen, I'm going to choose my site, which is Copilot Playground. I'm going to choose my library name, which is Expense Reports. And then I'm going to wait a moment while this trigger is set up. So in a moment, we should see the trigger being created in this menu over here. And now it's time to test our trigger. Just make sure it's working before we go build in our agent any further. To test the trigger, you hit these three dots right here, click on Test Trigger, and then click on when a file is created, properties only. Now, this agent has never been triggered, so we've got to go and trigger it manually for ourselves. So I'll come over here to the document library for expense reports, and then I'm going to drag and drop a new Excel file right over there. And just like that, you can see we've triggered the agent. Now we don't have any other steps programmed just yet, so we're going to close this menu and continue onward. Hit the close button and go on to the next step. Once the agent's triggered, we want it to start reading the Excel file, and to do that, we're going to need to create a brand new topic. So I'll click on the Topics tab over here, I'll hit Add a Topic, and then I'm going to name this topic Read an Excel File. Says what it does, right? Then I'm going to write a description, and this description is going to say this topic gets the content for an Excel file and extracts the contents to a JSON array. Let's zoom in a little bit here. Okay, you can see that a little bit better. One thing that we're going to need inside of this topic is the path to the Excel file, where it sits on that SharePoint document library. So I'm going to hit the details button right here, and we're going to create a brand new input variable. I'll hit create new input variable. Then I'm going to name it created file full path. We're going to let the agent dynamically fill it with the best option. We're not going to change the identify as field. And then we're going to type in the full path of the file created to trigger the agent, because the orchestrator is going to read the description of this variable, and it's going to go and get that value, the created file full path, from the trigger. So we've got our input variable. Next, we need to get the content of the Excel file so our agent can read it. So I'm going to add a new tool here and go to connector. I'm going to search for get file content. And there's a couple of these options, so need to make sure you're using the right one. Let's pick get file content using path and hit the submit button. And when we do, we need to fill in these inputs for the node. Click on this so we can fill in the site address. The site address, I can hit the drop down. There we go. Pick my Copilot Playground site, and for the file path, I'm going to use the variable I just created. Created file full path. And don't need to do anything else there. Next thing we're going to do is create a prompt node to read our Excel file. So I'm going to press the plus button right here, scroll down, add a tool, and then we're going to select new prompt, because we're going to write a brand new prompt right here. What are we going to call this prompt? Let's call this prompt Excel file worksheet values to JSON. And I've got the description right over here, so I'm going to go and paste it in, and then we're going to read this together. Might have a little bit of formatting to do. Oh my gosh, look at that JSON. We're going to have to format that in a minute. But let's take a moment to read our instructions. It says, read an Excel file and extract the value of the cells in each worksheet. Makes sense, right? Then for inputs, we're going to use the Excel file. And the instructions are open the Excel workbook and get all the worksheets. Then we're going to get the used range of each worksheet. So that means get the range inside of the workbook where the cells are populated on each worksheet. Then we're going to extract all of the non-blank cells, so all of the cells that have values in the used range, and load it into something called a Python dictionary. It's a data structure in Python. Then output the response as a JSON in the following format. And here we have, a JSON. It has worksheets, worksheet name, cells, ranges, and values. And this one isn't formatted too pretty here. It kind of lost its formatting when I was copying and pasting it in. But that's okay, because here you can see we're going to have the worksheet that we're reading from. We're going to have all of the cells in it. We're going to have where that cell is, and we're going to have its values. Now you might remember I said Python up here, right? Like, why the heck did I go ahead and say Python? Well, we have to use a feature called Code Interpreter to go and read the Excel sheet. So I'm going to go over here to Settings, and I'm going to enable Code Interpreter. If this is disabled for you and you can't turn it on, you have to go to the Power Platform Admin Center and enable this. So ask your administrator for some help. Now that we have this enabled, we're almost ready to test it. I'm just going to replace this Excel file placeholder with an actual file. Let's call this Excel file. Upload an image or document. It's sitting on my messy desktop. There we go. We have the unfilled expense report. So let's hit the test button and see what happens. Now I pressed the test button a little bit too quickly because what I really needed to do was choose the output format JSON. So I'll go hit that test button again. And here you can see, the JSON that it output. So we've got the worksheets inside of my Excel file, which is expense form. We've got the cells, and then we've got all of the ranges, B1, B2, C2, and all their values right there. So every single value in the Excel spreadsheet is represented right here. And that's what we're going to need for our agent. Now, if you're curious what's happening in the background, the prompt which uses Code Interpreter is actually executing this Python code. So if you want to go ahead and read it, you can, but it's not necessary for you to understand it to know how this agent is working. And before we save this prompt, I'm going to select all of the values inside of this JSON and put it on my clipboard and hit the save button. And you're going to see why in just a moment. Once the prompt is saved, scroll down to the prompt node and then add the get file content by path variable here so that you can pass in the Excel file, and then give the output variable a name. I've called it prompt output. Now the last thing that we're going to need in this topic is something called a topic output variable, and that's going to allow us to pass the Excel cell values outside of the topic so the orchestrator can use them in further steps and further actions. To do that, hit the Details button and then go to the Output tab. We're going to create a new variable here, and it's going to be called Excel File Cell Values. It's going to be a record type, so we'll hit Record and then hit Edit Schema. Maybe we're going to hit Dismiss. I think what I want to do here is go from sample data, and what you're going to recall is that I copied and pasted that big old JSON from the prompt. So when I hit Confirm, it's going to get the schema. There you go. It's perfect. And then the last thing I want to do is input a variable description. The orchestrator doesn't really know what to do with these output variables unless you give them a description, so it's important that you give them a good one. So here I'm going to say cell locations and values from each worksheet in an Excel file, because that's exactly what it is. And then to load this output variable up, I need to set a new variable value. I'm going to pick my Excel file values record, that's my output variable, and then I'm going to fill it in with the prompt output structured output. There you go. Looks good. Let's hit the save button. And so that's how you create this brand new topic to read an Excel file. Our agent is going to need some knowledge to decide which account codes to use to populate that expense report. So let's go add a file to knowledge to help it do just that. I'll click over here on the knowledge tab, and then I'm going to click add knowledge. And I'm going to get that knowledge from my hard drive. So I'm going to scroll to the desktop here and look for my accounting expense codes PDF, and then hit add to agent. Now I've got this file off my machine, but I'll also give you a link to it inside of the YouTube show notes as well. Well, this is uploading. Let's take a look at what it does, what it has inside of here. So we have accounting codes. This document lists accounting codes used to classify and report common business travel and related expense categories. So we've got the account code, which is a number here. We've got the account name, and then also a description. And this description is what's going to help the agent determine how to classify the expenses over on my travel expense report right over here. Let's head back to our agent and open up accounting expense codes. Now, one other thing we need to do is give it a description, better description than what's here anyways, because the agent always relies on descriptions to tell it how to use the knowledge source. So here I said the accounting expense codes contains a list of valid account codes along with their account names and descriptions. Its purpose is to provide guidance so the agent knows how to classify line items on a travel expense report. We'll hit the Save button, and we'll see the little spinny thing. That's the technical term. And here we can see that the status here is still in progress. So we have to wait until this is done for us to run our agent. But I think right now we can safely move on to the next step, which is creating our tool to write back to the Excel-based expense report. To create that tool, we're going to go to the Tools tab, and then we're going to click on Add a Tool. And what we're going to need here is an agent flow, because we're going to have to chain a couple of actions together to write to our Excel file. Inside of the trigger here, we're going to need 4 text inputs. Count them. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to need drive ID. We're going to need drive item ID. We're going to need the worksheet name. And then we're going to need the cell values. And the agent is going to pass in values to each one of these inputs. The drive ID is the unique identifier of the SharePoint document library. The drive item ID is the unique identifier of the file right here that we're going to be using. The worksheet name is the plain English name of the tab in the worksheet. And the cell values are that JSON array of cell values and ranges from the prompt action. Next, we're going to add a parse JSON action. I think I can just click on data operation, and we need to parse the cell values from the triggers, because cell values is a text data type and we need it to be an array data type. I'm going to click on sample payload to generate the schema, and I'm going to copy and paste in that very large record of worksheets, worksheet names, and cells right here. But I think what I want to do, no, I think I've got it, because I just want to put in the cells. So I want to pare this back a little bit and make sure I'm just getting the cells. There we go. Get rid of all this extra stuff right here and only have the cells, because that's what the agent is going to pass in. Great. And now I'll click done, and I have my schema. It's an array, looking good. Now what do I want to do? I want to loop over each one of the values in this parse JSON action. So I'm going to add an apply to each control here, and we're going to loop over the body of that array. And the next step, this is the fun one. We're going to invoke an HTTP request, and we're going to use the Microsoft Entra ID. Microsoft Entra ID, where are you? Let's just type in HTTP and see if we can find it. HTTP. Come on. Where is it here? There we go. So use this one, HTTP with Microsoft Entra ID pre-authorized, and invoke an HTTP request. And we're going to use this to make a call to the Microsoft Graph API to write values to a cell. If you want to know more about how this works, go to Google, type in Microsoft Graph API, update cell value, then click on this piece of documentation. Here we're looking at update range, and it's going to give you what the HTTP request needs to be. So right here. And then further down the page, it's going to show us a sample request, and here we can see a sample of what the body should look like. Let's go back to our agent flow. So the method that we're going to use is the patch method, because we want to update the spreadsheet. We don't want to use the get values, which would allow us to read a cell or post. We want to use patch. And the HTTP request that we want to make looks like this. Okay, we're going to copy and paste this in here, because this is really tough to write, but let's zoom in and see what's going on. So we want to use v1.0 drives, and then the drive ID, that's the unique identifier of the drive. Then we want to do items, drive item ID, right? That's the unique identifier of the ID. Workbook, worksheets, worksheet name, that's the tab of our worksheet, and then we give the cell address that we want to update. So if I click on this value, you can see it's items apply to each question mark range. Then we want to add some headers here, and I'm going to add a content type header so the HTTP action knows how to interpret this. And we'll do content type application JSON, and we're going to feed in a JSON into the body of the request. And this is a funny looking one as well. So we'll type our squiggly brackets like that, type a space, and then we'll put values, as in the values we're going to write to the Excel sheet. And then we type 2 square brackets in either direction. That's kind of strange, but that's exactly what they want. And then some quotes, and then we want to get the body value from our parse JSON, and that's looking perfect. Now we do need to add a connection here, and let's call this connection Excel Auto Agent. And this is really important. We want to input the Microsoft Entra ID resource URI. We want to use graph.microsoft.com so it's allowed to access that base URL, base resource URL. So type that in for both. HTTP secure graph.microsoft.com. Hit the sign in button. It's going to create that new connection. You absolutely have to do this. We'll hit allow access. Looks good. And then finally, we get to respond back to our agent, but we don't need to send anything back. That's okay. All right, I think we're good here. Let's hit the save button. Save and publish. Good to go. So now we should have something that our agent can use. Agent flow published successfully. Go back to the agent. Okay, so we've created our tool, and now it's adding our tool to the agent. And when it shows up, we're going to add a couple of descriptions to it so the agent knows how to use our tool. There we go. It's called Untitled. Oof, that's not a very good name. Let's call it something nice. So we'll call this Write Cell Values to an Excel Worksheet. Looking good. And let's say this tool is used to write values to an Excel worksheet. Does what it says what it is. Okay, and now here's the really important part. So we have our inputs to the tool, and now we need to tell the agent how to fill them. So I'm going to first tell it how to fill the drive ID. So the drive ID is that unique identifier of the SharePoint document library. And I'm going to use this description. Value from the drive ID property when a file is created trigger. So when our trigger is set off, it also returns a bunch of values to the agent, including the drive ID, so we don't need to go and get it. Gonna hit the customize button for drive item ID, and similarly we want to say value from the drive ID item property when a file is created trigger. Okay, so write that in as well. For the worksheet name, this is going to be the name of the worksheet where the agent will write the values, so copy and paste into there too. And for the cell values, this one is going to be a little bit longer. So we'll start by saying an array of objects with the properties, range, and value. The agent will write a value to each range specified must be in the following format. And then I'm going to give it an example of what it should look like. So here I have, square bracket and some squiggly brackets. Might need to actually replace all of these here with the proper kind of double quote. This is just what you have to do when you copy and paste things sometimes. But it'll give you another moment to take a look at what I've typed in right here. Okay, this is really riveting YouTube stuff right here. Okay, almost done. Almost done. There we go. Now it looks good. So I'll hit the save button. And there we go. Now we've got our tool that's going to write cell values to an Excel worksheet. This is the moment of truth. Let's see what our agent can do. Whoa, slow down there, partner. There's one more thing we need to do, and we need to go back to our instructions and change these placeholders into actual references. So I'm going to remove this placeholder and I'm going to type in read an Excel file, and now we're matching it with a topic. And I'm going to change this to write cell values to an Excel worksheet as a tool. Then I'll hit the save button here. And now our instructions are referencing the tools and topics that we need the agent to trigger when it starts to run autonomously. Okay, it's showtime. Come on over to the test panel and hit the 3 dots, then test trigger and when a file is created. And remember, we dropped a file into the document library earlier, so we can reuse this trigger because we haven't run this yet. We didn't have any actions in our agent. So I'm going to hit start testing, and then the activity pane is going to come up, and you can see a trigger was detected with all of this information inside of it, including that drive ID and item ID. Then the agent started to read the Excel file. It grabbed all the Excel file values and put them in this JSON. It got a list of all the valid account codes, and now it's writing these values to the Excel worksheet. So if I pop this open, we can see this agent writing step by step each of the account codes and the account names into the Excel file. And look, they're coming in 100% perfect. All the restaurants have meals and entertainment. The hotel just got hotel and lodging. And it looks like a person is sitting there and typing it into real time. That's it. That's the Excel Autonomous Agent tutorial.